They've tried to have a media blackout on it, but it's failed, and he's getting more co-sponsors. It's clearly in the Constitution that it's illegal. And Congressman Walter Jones, currently serving the 9th term in Congress for North Carolina, joins us. He has introduced legislation that if Obama launches another war, which he wants to put physical troops in, back them up in Syria, that the impeachment proceedings will kick in. We've already seen it in Libya. Obama says he has UN authority. This is a short segment, long segment coming up, and then he's got to go to a vote. Congressman, tell us about the bill, the progress, and why this bill is needed. And again, thank you for introducing it and standing up for the Constitution, and thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, Alex, thank you very much. A couple of months you gave me an opportunity to talk about HCON Resolution 107, and I really need your help. And more important, I want the listeners to your show to pick up the phone and call them members of Congress and ask the members of Congress to join in this effort to make sure that Congress meets its constitutional responsibility and not allow a president of the United States on their own decision to just bypass Congress and bomb a country, as you made reference to Libya, and you were exactly right. This bill right now, and being on your show, I was on the LaRouche show over the weekend, and we're going to do as many shows as possible. We need the listeners to pick up the phone and call their member of Congress right there in the district office, whatever state they're in, and say, I want my congressman to go on HCON Resolution 107, and that's what we need to happen. We need a hearing, and we do have the ear of the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. His name is Lamar Smith from Texas, and we've had a lot of interest, thanks to you and others, from the state of Texas about this constitutional issue. So we would like to get a hearing sometime in July. And, Alex, the way this place works on any issue, you've got to get a hearing before the committee moves it to the floor. And I think if we could get a hearing with 2 or 3 panels of experts on the Constitution, I think we could really convince Congress that we need to move this resolution forward. So being on your show is very special, and I appreciate it so much.
Are you kidding, sir? We want to thank you for having the courage to bring forward this and to work with Ron Paul's office. I know that his presidential campaign advisor, constitutional scholar, Bruce Fine, constitutional lawyer, helped draft it. It's absolutely constitutional. We're about to go to break and come back and go over those areas. And then if you've got phone numbers or who we should call, who specifically should we talk to?
We've got phone numbers, and we'll share that in the next break.
Amazing. We're about to go to break in about a minute. Separately, explain to people why it's unconstitutional for a president to launch a war without a congressional approval.
Well, it's pretty explicit in the Constitution, and we have bypassed this for so long, going back to the Korean War, and it's in Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. And Alex, I'll tell you, I was with the group in 1999, a couple Democrats, but mostly Republicans. We went to the federal courts on President Clinton deciding to go into Kosovo and bomb Kosovo. The courts threw it back out because the courts always say, well, Congress has the authority to cut the budgets when you go to war. Well, we never do that. Then again, in last year, Dennis Kucinich and I were the 2 leads, and 2 Republicans, Ron Paul being one, and 2 Democrats. So they made 3 Democrats, counting Dennis, and 3 Republicans, counting me, Walter Jones, with Jonathan Turley. We went to the courts again on Libya. We thought we had an excellent opportunity, legally speaking, and the courts kicked it out and says, no, you've got the authority to cut the funding. And Congress will never cut the funding, and I'm not going to be critical, but when you got kids over there giving their life for a country, you would hate to think, well, if I don't vote for this, they might not get the ammunition they need to defend themselves.
But that's kind of like the chicken or the egg, because if you're sending them into a fraudulent war to begin with, in the whole war, you won't need the ammo. Stay right there, Congressman. We're going to come right back on the other side and break all this down and give out some phone numbers to try to get this bill out there on the floor. Sick of the globalists, eugenicists, control freaks adding poison to your water and laughing as you get sick and die? Start purifying your water with ProPure. My friends, I've done a lot of research, and the best gravity filter out there, bar none, is ProPure. And it's available discounted at Infowars.com. Its filters are silver impregnated to prevent bacterial growth. There's no priming required. It's NSF 42 certified. Optional fluoride filters can reduce fluoride up to 95%. Easy to set up and use. Doesn't require electricity. Purify water from lakes, streams, ponds, and wells. This filter system leaves in beneficial minerals, which is key. Save money by not buying bottled water and avoid BPA that leaches from the plastic. ProPure is the best gravity-fed filter out there. It's what my family uses. Infowars.com already has the lowest price on ProPure. But if you add the promo code WATER at checkout, you get an additional 10% off at Infowars.com. You can also call to order 888-253-3139. Representative Walter B. Jones, congressman from North Carolina, is our guest, and he is the man who introduced the legislation to pass a law that simply enforces the Constitution, that if Obama launches one more military operation and tells Congress openly, I don't need any authorization from you. Because since the police action of the Korean War, they don't call it a declaration of war, but still they get a congressional authorization and funding, and Congress gives the go-ahead. And for those that don't know, the president isn't even the commander-in-chief until the war is declared, and then he's the executive. The Congress says, here's the money, here's the enemy, here's what you do. Now you go out and command them, George Washington, basically, okay? That's what happens. Now it's just commander-in-chief, and the Congress doesn't count, and they operate like potted plants or a ceremonial, vestigial, something of a bygone age. And we saw the spectacle. I'm going to play a video clip of this coming up after the congressman speaks some, because he needs our help, and we need to help him because we're all Americans in this together. He's had the courage to do this against these criminals, because it is criminal to launch a war without congressional approval. It's treason. But the point is, we saw the spectacle a few months ago of the Secretary of Defense and others saying, hey, we don't need you anymore. We have the UN authority. And Obama's letter saying, hey, I don't just do this on my own. He went even further. We have the UN saying so. Unbelievable. Now, Representative Jones has introduced a piece of legislation, and he's going to give you the number, everything about it, and he needs your help to get it rammed out of committee, okay, because they're trying to procedurally block it. You notice you're seeing a media blackout on this, so media across the country, you need to have Congressman Jones on, and people need to get, when Ron Paul's on, ask him about this, because Ron Paul's supporting it. And his head policy advisor helped write this, constitutional lawyer Bruce Fine. Congressman, you've got the floor. Thank you so much for coming on with us. What are we facing right now, and how can we get the Constitution enforced?
Alex, thank you for your comments, and you really nailed it, but let me add to those as well. As I mentioned earlier, I was part of a group that in 1999 went to the federal courts by saying President Clinton should not have bypassed Kosovo. Kosovo, excuse me, and he really did bypass Congress in a way. And then Dennis Kucinich and I and Ron Paul, we went to the federal courts a year ago with Jonathan Turley, professor from George Washington University, constitutional lawyer, to say to the federal courts, Obama should not have gone to Libya the way he did. He bypassed the Constitution, in our opinion, and he bypassed Congress. And that's why this is so important. We need to have a debate. This is a vehicle for debate. It's H-Con Resolution 107. In fact, your listeners can just say HCR 107. HCR 107. And let me read very briefly the title, Expressing the Sense of Congress that the use of offensive military force by a president without prior and clear authorization of an act of Congress constitutes an impeachable high crime and misdemeanor under Article 2, Section 4 of the Constitution. And Alex, if your listeners would please write down this number, it's 202-224-3121. Let me repeat one more time. 202-224-3121. That is the United States Capitol switchboard. All the listeners have to do is to call that number and say, I would like to speak to Congressman X. And then they would put them into the office of Congressman X. And the person that answers the phone, what that individual should say is, I am so-and-so, this is my congressman, I want to ask him to join HCR 107 and help Congress get the the nerve it needs to defend the Constitution when this country goes to war. It's not fair to our military. It's not fair to men and women in uniform, and it's not fair to the taxpayer when we have a president, I don't care if it's a Democrat or Republican, that bypasses Congress to go to war. Let's go back to what the Constitution requires is a declaration of war.
Congressman, I want to continue on this line with people. Folks, you need to call and tell them to get behind this resolution, 202-224-3121, 202-224-3121. This obviously is extremely newsworthy that Ron Paul, yourself, and others have done this. And the fact that there's been almost no media coverage since you first did this, what, a month and a half ago or so, and time sure flies, shows that they're scared of this genie getting out of the bottle. This is a big deal that not only did he launch the war in Libya, but when it was brought up, he put out a letter saying the UN gives me authority. I mean, that is beyond just launching a war and the president doing it on his own, which is totally unconstitutional. But it's the UN doing it, and it clearly violates Article 1, Clause 8, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. Again, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11. Clearly, Congress is over all of this. That's not our opinion. It's a fact. And so it's even worse for the president to do this and say the UN gave him the authority. Now there's all sorts of stuff going on backing al-Qaeda. Even the LA Times admits al-Qaeda is being funded by the West to attack Assad. I'm not saying the Syrian regime's good guys, but compared to al-Qaeda, how is this not a bigger news issue?
Alex, you're exactly right. I had bought the book, and I would recommend it to many of your listeners. It's called Funding the Enemy, How U.S. Taxpayers Bankroll the Taliban. It's by Douglas Wissing, W-I-S-S-I-N-G, Wissing. And it continues to show, that's why this HCON Resolution 107 is important. Once we go to war, we forget the obligation and the commitment to the troops and to the American people by just spending money we don't have. We've already spent $1.3 trillion in Afghanistan and Iraq. That's not being paid for by Congress. That is on the credit card waiting to be paid for by the next generation.